Welcome everyone. We're going to wait a couple more minutes while your audio is connecting.
Martin, I have a question about the breakout groups. How many of them, and how are you managing it? What will be the
themes? Once we get it, we'll do a quick review and announcement. Then we'll wait when the session starts, the amount of participants that we have online, and then we'll divide accordingly so that we have around 5 people per breakout room.
And the themes would be?
The general theme, we'll explain that, but it's basically to create an ideation session. Welcome everyone. We're still waiting for some of you folks to connect your audio. It normally takes Zoom a little bit to do that. Before we start, let me give a couple of pointers around the logistics of the session today that we're hosting on Zoom. Thank you everyone also for joining in the intimacy of their homes. These are obviously special times, but it's great to be able to connect around the world with all of you. Most of the people that you see on video will be speakers in today's session. And what we ask is, if you're a participant, you will notice you're not able to speak. You are muted. We will unmute you once we go into breakout sessions, but speakers are able to unmute themselves. An important thing to mention is it would be ideal for anyone that's a participant to turn off their video, so that what I will suggest next will improve your experience in the Zoom session. So if you just joined in, you'll be able to hover with your mouse over any person that is online that does not have a video, and you will find on the square that says their name a three button icon that is blue, and when you press that, you'll be able to see the option of hide non-video participants. When you click on that and press hide non-video participants, you will only see on screen the people that have videos on. So again, if you're not a speaker, you can turn off your video. And then that we already will be able to flag who will be our speakers, and this allows a more dynamic session further on as we're going into breakout rooms. Before we start, my name is Martin Weinstein. I'm from the Yale Open Innovation Lab, and I will be also helping in the process of the Zoom, as well as participate as a speaker. I think we are 2 minutes into this. Maybe Miro, we can start. We have enough traction and people still coming in, which is great. So maybe Miro, why don't you kick us off with some words, and then I'll take it from there as well.
Thank you very much, Martin. Welcome everybody. My name is Miroslav Polzer. I'm with the International Association for the Advancement of Innovative Approaches to Global Challenges, a civil society organization based in Austria. And I'm delighted to welcome you to this webinar about envisioning a People's COP in November 2020, new thinking and digital innovation for non-state actors' engagement in global climate action. Today's event is organized by my organization IAI, by the Climate Change Coalition, by the Education, Communication and Outreach Stakeholders Community, Open Climate Collaboraton from Yale Open Lab, represented by Martin, and Glotcher Foundation, New York. And the idea or the rationale for today's event is that we have now June 2020, global community is facing an escalating climate crisis, and somehow we don't succeed with the existing structures, with the UNFCCC process, to really bring emissions down and really halt the global warming. And so new thinking is needed, and the global community has delegated most of this coordination to the COP, to the UNFCCC process and the Conference of the Parties, these big climate change conferences, which are once every year. And this year, the COP has been postponed for 1 year because of the coronavirus crisis. And we said this is now an opportunity to rethink and broaden our thinking, to think out of the box, and to see how can we bring also non-state actors stronger into the equation. How can we really, there are so many people who are going to the streets, or they are somehow looking in their circles what to do, but they are very often isolated, uncoordinated, and with a lack of empowering technology, knowledge, funding, and so. And if we here as these privileged people who have access to these processes and so can build bridges for non-state actors to also get engaged, and that they non-state actors and especially young people and the individual citizen can contribute to these global climate action efforts, then we could really have a significant impact. And as we are with the Climate Change Coalition also, and Martin, Yale Open Lab has a very strong innovation, digital innovation competence also. We said, let's look also how we can harness the potentials of digital innovation, blockchain technology especially, and Web 3.0 technologies to really have better collaboration and more effective and enhanced climate action. And this is also connected with the campaign that the UNFCCC and the COP26 presidency have launched a few days ago, the Race to Zero campaign, and we want to add momentum and really bring everybody on board so that everybody can take meaningful and rewarding climate action. And with this, I'm expressing my great gratitude to Martin, Tom, Mark, and of course, Laura, Marie, and YOUNGO for being with us here, and to having a joint ideation and creation of new ideas and concepts.
Great, thank you very much, Miro. We would not be all together if it was not for your efforts, and thank everyone for joining. I won't speak much on my end, since I'll give more introductory words later on as we do our flash presentation. Like I said, I'm from the Yale Open Innovation Lab, and our focus tends to be in the intersection between radical collaboration between multiple stakeholders, the role of emerging digital innovation, and large-scale planetary problems. Climate and energy obviously is the heart of our problem. But it's that radical collaboration and exponential participation that really leads us to ask some of the questions that we'll be posting today, and having a dialogue with everyone here. Our format for today, and I will share my screen real quick to quickly go over the schedule. I will start by introducing a video from one of my colleagues, Angel Xu, from the Yale National University of Singapore campus, and who will talk about non-state actors, and then we'll move into Laura, who's already online and will be sharing some words from the European Climate Pact. And after that, here, I'll share my screen. I hope everyone has been able to receive this content that Miro passed around. So we'll start with the video from Angel, move into Laura, and then we'll do some flash presentations by all of our speakers. This will help us really prime the discussion. We are in a key moment in the year, as Miro described, in the context of important sessions being hosted by UNFCCC, with an outlook to November. So after priming this discussion, we'll move into a Q&A session. So when we go into Q&A, we will take questions from the audience, everyone that's joining. And so those can be directed either to the whole panel or to specific speakers. And then once we do that, we will create these breakout rooms that will be assigned automatically. We'll probably create around 8 breakout rooms. And I'll talk a little bit more about the format for it, but ideally we can imagine ourselves being into a smaller Zoom where we will be gathering ideas and comments and thoughts that should be considered for designing events in the context of November. We will then gather back into the central Zoom room and do final announcements and summaries. That will be the format for today. So without further ado, I'd love to kick us off with the video from Angel. And just to echo what Miro said, the ability to be able to have this sort of stakeholder consultation around how to better think about our climate engagements in critical pivotal years, and how do we leverage the fact that we are now a lot more used to being able to connect virtually and remotely, can be a great asset. And part of the session is also to explore that and to see how we can assist both the official efforts being undertaken by UNFCCC, but also the complementary unofficial efforts. So with that, a big part of the focus of today, of course, is the engagement of non-state actors. Cities, companies, and of course, individuals have become some of the most important champions. And Angel she will introduce herself, but a world expert on the role of non-state actor engagement. It's a great place to start our priming our dialogues for today. So I'll start sharing my screen again, and I will start the video. Let me know if the audio is good.
Thanks so much to Martine and Miroslav for inviting me to give some remarks over recorded video to you today, given the late time it is for me here in Singapore. My name is Angel Xu, and I'm an assistant professor of environmental studies at Yale-NUS College. And I founded and direct the Data-Driven EnviroLab, or Data-Driven Lab. And for the last 5 years, we've been quantifying the contribution of cities, states and regions, companies to global climate change mitigation. So these are what we refer to as non-state and subnational actors. So why are we interested in what these subnational and non-state actors are doing on climate change? Well, frankly, the picture of climate change action and governance has become a lot more complicated over the last several years. Whereas before we could have imagined this figure here with the UN Framework Convention Secretariat in the center and the spokes in the orbit around the UNFCCC being primarily national governments, now we can see that the picture has become a lot more complex. So now we have multilateral clubs, for example, and we also have companies working in transnational climate initiatives such as CDP and also We Mean Business. You have transnational city networks, so networks of cities all around the world that are committing on their own climate change targets and voluntarily submitting their own climate action. So the picture looks much more complicated, or in the words of Eleanor Ostrom, polycentric, with multiple nodes of climate action. And so largely we refer to the previous mode of climate change governance that was primarily focused on national governments as being a system focused on state actors, as I've shown here on the left, versus this new and increasingly growing body of action, which is referred to as non-state climate action, that involves actors as diverse as I just mentioned, from financial institutions to companies to states and cities, and even at the individual and organizational levels. And so why is it that we're interested in whether or not these actors can lead to additional climate change mitigation on top of national governments? Well, this is the latest research from the UN Environment Programme's Emissions Gap Report, which is produced on an annual basis. And you can see here, comparing to the gray scenario, 2005 policies, or these are the policies that have been implemented since 2005, we are nowhere close to where we need to be in order to get into the blue, yellow, and the green ranges, which are what climate science has emphasized is what's needed to avoid the most dangerous impacts of climate change. So we're currently headed towards this blue, this current policy scenario, and that's taking into account Copenhagen targets and Kyoto targets that countries have already put in place. And so looking out to 2030, we're facing a 12 to 15 gigaton gap between what we currently have put in place and where we need to be for a 2 degrees global temperature rise scenario. And then if we want to have any chance of reaching that 1.5 degree target, which was introduced in the Paris Agreement in 2015, that gap widens to 29 to 32 gigatons. we're currently at about 1.1 degrees above pre-industrial levels in terms of global warming. And so there's a very small window left, really less than 10 years, to really very rapidly ramp down global climate emissions. And so that's the reason why I'm interested in how these non-state and subnational actors can really help to narrow this emissions gap. And so we see that since the Paris Agreement in 2015, that the number of cities and companies pledging their own climate commitments has increased. And also in cooperative climate initiatives, the number has also increased. There was a peak at 2015, but overall, the trend of these international cooperative initiatives has increased since the Paris Agreement formally recognized their participation. And the latest numbers you can see in the UNFCCC's Global Climate Action Portal, formerly known as NASCA, or the Non-State Actor Zone for Climate Action, and that includes more than 18,000 actors recording more than 26,000 climate actions, including close to 200 national governments, more than 10,000 cities, close to 4,000 companies, more than 140 regions, and also close to 150 of these international cooperative initiatives. But the major question that we've been asking in our research is, what does this all add up to? Is this significant? Are they actually helping to further reduce carbon emissions, or are they simply a distraction? And so that's where our work has really come in. And so what we found, and these are our results from our latest 2019 report, is that when you take 6,000 of these subnational climate actions and their economy-wide emissions reduction targets in 10 high-emitting countries, including the US, China, India, Brazil, etc., and add them all up, along with more than 1,500 corporate commitments. So this isn't even the entire breadth of the universe of non-state subnational climate action. It can lead to an additional 1 to 2 gigatons on top of what national governments have currently pledged. And then if you quantify the highest level of potential, and that's represented here in this green bar in this chart. So through these initiatives and all these goals that they've committed together, that can get us back on track to a 2-degree scenario range. So the potential is really great. So that was just a taste of some of the work that we've been doing on some national non-state climate action to understand where these actors are taking action, how they're taking action, and whether or not they're actually leading to additional mitigation. So here are a few of the reports that you can download from our website, and please feel free to send me any questions that you may have. My email address is here, and my Twitter and our website. So I look forward to hearing from you, and I wish you the best of luck and a very productive discussion today.
Great, amazing words to kick us off from Angel. I will stop sharing my screen. Hopefully that's a good framing for everyone around why it's so important to be able to have a more participative role in climate action and policy. With that, Miro, would you like to introduce Laura?
It's my pleasure. So a few words about Laura Maanavilja, Information and Communications Officer at DG Climate Action of the European Commission, is one of the key persons to do outreach for the European Climate Pact. And the logic for inviting you, and we are very happy that you accepted our invitation, is that European Union is a multilateral structure, just like the United Nations. And as you have now the European Green Deal as a very ambitious project of the political leadership of the European Union and its member states to become climate neutral. And you have added this European Climate Pact to get really non-state actors engaged. It is your leadership and your experience can help the UNFCCC also to learn. And as it's for us, like me in Austria, I'm a citizen of the European Union. I am global citizen, and so for me, a pact with the European Union should not be something totally different from what I'm planning to do also for the global level, and somehow looking how we can align thinking and concepts and tools is very important for the practical level, and therefore we are delighted that you are with us. Please say.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me. Indeed, I work in the climate department of the European Commission in Brussels. So I'm here from the policymaker perspective. And what I wanted to share with you is some information on the European Climate Pact that we are currently working on. So indeed, the European Green Deal is the sort of broad policy agenda that is guiding a lot of our work at the moment. The Green Deal covers different issues from fighting climate change to reducing pollution, protecting biodiversity, working on sustainable mobility, on the energy transition. And it includes as policy work, both legislative work, policy initiatives, but also initiatives like this Climate Pact that we are now bringing in, where the idea really is to help give a voice and a space for non-state action on climate. Here the idea is that a lot of good work on climate issues is already ongoing. There are a lot of great initiatives like the initiatives that many of you are working on. And there's also a lot more that we can do together. And when we connect the dots and when we try to stimulate this kind of cooperation and exchange, that's so important in this space. So this is something that we have started to prepare over the recent months, and that we continue to put together this year. We want to make this a participatory process, so that's why we have kicked off the work by launching a public consultation that's open for anyone. I think maybe you have the link. I will share the link with all of you in any case later on. This is an online consultation that anybody can respond to, where we invite citizens and organizations and networks to share their views on how we can support action, how we can build awareness, how we can work together. So here's and Miro is sharing here the screen and what the public consultation looks like, but the links will be coming later on as well. What we are thinking for the Pact, thank you for the link, it's already there. What we are thinking for the Pact in very broad terms, we are thinking of 3 strands of action. One is focused on talking climate, so that's the kind of awareness and dialogue part of it. There will be lots of different communication activities and also really from the ground up dialogues that we want to organize to really look at the narratives on climate change, look at the hopes and fears that people have. How does this impact me? What does this mean for me? What are the solutions, and how can we move forward together on the understanding and awareness on climate change. A second element is concrete action, both supporting the action that's already taking place and triggering new action and new pledges for climate. We will be launching a process where individuals and organizations and networks can put forward climate pledges, share them with others. So we hope to create a sort of a virtuous cycle of good practice and examples that already exist and others can get inspiration from. And the third key element is what we call platforms. So that can be exchanges in different formats, be it physical events. In the current context, that's a bit more difficult, but also a lot in virtual spaces, in online formats through the web, in sessions like the one you are organizing today. So we really hope that we will be able to make the most out of this. It is a very ambitious program, I have to say, because we really want this to be broad and inclusive. So we want to involve both citizens, but also the sort of multiplier organizations, the networks, actors in education, in business, in local authorities. So it's quite a broad initiative, but that's what makes it exciting, I think. And we really hope that we will be able to connect a lot of the good work that's already ongoing and spark new ideas and new actions. So very concretely, we are at the moment running an online consultation. You're very welcome to respond to that and also get in touch with any other ideas and initiatives. There will also be a webinar for organizations and networks interested in learning a bit more on the 15th of June next week. I can also share the details on that later on. And we will be organizing other webinars for those who have participated in the public consultation so that we can dig a bit deeper into those contributions and really start working together on the Pact. The next step then will be to put all of this input and ideas together, and the sort of fully fledged launch for the Pact is planned for the end of this year. That will be the start of the process. This will be a multi-year initiative that we will evolve and expand, but that's when we will kick off with a lot of communication and pledges and new initiatives. So thank you very much. I'd be happy to take any questions. I'm not sure if I will be able to stay for the whole session, but looking forward to discussing with all of you. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Laura, for these insights and for your great work. And with this, I would give some ideas on how my organization, and also in the context of the digital innovation community within the UNFCCC process, which has been set up at the last conference of the parties, COP25 in Madrid in December. We have developed some ideas around using digital innovation for getting non-state actors engaged, making the COPs more accessible. And today we would like to present these ideas and get some feedback in creating a community of like-minded organizations and initiatives who would like to create a joint momentum towards the November 2020. And although the official state-led conference of the parties will not take place this year, but the non-state actors have no reason to not to act, and so we are going to organize the People's COP with these our partners like Climate Change Coalition, Open Climate Collaboraton, ECOS, and many more. And my presentation here will focus on using digital innovation for a climate action pact on different levels of societal organization, and also this with the People COP. And now let's see how I can progress to the, okay, wait a minute, I have the problem that my, okay. Yes, it's working. So as we have these ambitious climate neutrality goals, Paris Agreement says by 2050 we need to be climate neutral. The European Commission has the European Green Deal with the same goal. Austrian national government has a goal of 2040 climate neutrality. There are several leading cities which are saying we want to be climate neutral by 2030. But the challenge is that only if really all parts of society get engaged, then there is a chance for society, really, for these communities to reach this ambitious goal. So it needs to be also the individual citizen, also the young person that on the one hand is protesting for a safer climate future. We all need to become climate neutral, or at least have a pathway and an idea of the tools how we will get to climate neutrality. And here I have an example from the UNFCCC process, this nation state-led structure. They have a wonderful climate pledge for individuals created. But since the last 5-6 years, they have altogether 5,000 people have signed this pledge. And this shows that the existing structures are not really appropriate to get everybody engaged. Or now we have also with the UNFCCC this Race to Zero climate ambition mobilization campaign. And this again focuses on businesses, cities and regions and investors, but not, there's no thinking about the role of the individual and especially young person. But in our organization, we are convinced that it starts with the individual, and the power of the global citizen is which determines all the other structures of societal organization. And therefore we need new thinking, and we need tools and new thinking to get the individual. We need a new narrative and engagement collaboration tools. And so in terms of the new narrative and somehow a new social contract that we really all together work for the common good, for a climate safe future. A key message is it starts with me. And then the second key message is that we can set up climate action communities. If we work together, focused on our location or on our thematic interests, we can achieve results, we can collaboratively have impact. And the third message is digital innovation, and especially blockchain technology. Digital innovation helps to organize this collaboration and create incentive mechanisms and trust, and so that society on this global climate action area is functioning again. And it's also one of the messages is that, for instance, now if people think what they could do, they feel it's impossible for them to become climate neutral. But our message here is if we get the social and technological innovations together, if we create the communities and the tools, then a climate neutral lifestyle is possible. And in terms of digital innovation, we have plans for a digital Pact app, individual climate action dashboard, digital climate action communities, citizens climate action outcome certification, digital finance, open climate collaborathon, climate action accounting, data and digital innovation infrastructure for multi-stakeholder climate action coordination and incentivization, and some kind of extended climate action reporting language like this XBRL, the business digital language for non-financial reporting of companies. We can create a new standard for a digital language for multi-stakeholder climate action reporting in a global context. And we are convinced that the future of the global climate action will be that everybody will hold in his apps some kind of dashboard which will guide everyday decisions, and in a gamified setting incentivize people to take action. And the first level, basic level of this app is that a person who does not want to connect with others or share any details about what this person is doing because of concerns also can do it alone. It's already this first step to commit to a climate neutral, to make the climate neutral pledge is already a very important first step. And then there's the possibility on such an app or to choose from theme badges and download them and put them on the app without any really recognition from anybody else or any evidence really for others to check. But this is possible, and it's the first step. The problem is it's not really funny, and there's no societal recognition, and the impact is limited. The next level is to have then the community level, but based on relatively old digital technologies, the Web 2.0. And here we have the possibility to create open badges where the individual then specifies smart goals, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound goals. And these goals and activities can then be recognized by communities which are organized around location, let's say a city community or thematic communities. And this is really functioning in the community and in a setting where people know one another, they trust one another. But as long as there are no standards and really the transparency and accountability, it's not functioning in a global context, and also the incentive mechanisms, the financial flows will not come because it's too much potential for fraud and not correct behavior. So now with this digital innovation, with blockchain technology, and with the expertise of the climate change coalition members, and also open climate collaborathon, climate action accounting systems, we can now create an app, a dashboard where people can collect digital badges, some kind of crypto stamps, non-fungible tokens, And this is now the next level. And with our organization, we are planning to work on this over the coming months, and especially then also in November, where we are planning to launch. And the actions that the individual can then take and get registered and certified can use then digital measurement, reporting and verification, smart standards, certification and global registration of climate action activities, and attribution of outcomes with crypto stamps, digital collectibles, digital climate action reporting and storytelling, and trading or digital collection of outcome certificates. It enables games, because if the climate action outcomes are really well documented and trustworthy, then also gamification like the City Climate Cup, something that the ETH Zurich and ICLE is working with us as well, can really function, and there can be a lot of incentivization and also connection with digital finance, what also Anita will talk about later. And for this communities using these technologies and creating this ecosystem for non-state for the individual climate neutrality and climate action pact to function, we are going to have several activities in November 2020. And in general, the idea is that there will be very many activities around the world, many of them virtual, some in person. We will have activities with our digital innovation community. We will develop further the plan for the digital COP26 pavilion. With the Climate Change Coalition, there's this D2I2 initiative that Tom will talk more about. Martin will have his Open Climate Collaborathon, and in this context of the Collaborathon, we will also hold our Digital Climate Pact conference in Klagenfurt in Austria, and we will there create a We the People Digital Pact community, give youth a chance youth climate action empowerment community, and Glotcha community of local communities. And we will develop their digital finance instruments, starting with crypto stamps, but also till digital municipal bonds and similar things. And we will discuss mass mobilization and much more. And your ideas are welcome. And here is my email also on the last slide to get in contact if you would like to get involved in the We the People COP. And the message is, we don't need to wait for governments. There's so much that we as non-state actors can do. And let's start the journey. Let's organize in communities. Let's join forces, and let's convene in November 2020 for the first We the People COP. And with this, I give back to Martin.
Great, thank you, Miro. And I will. I'll try to keep it brief, but I'll give an introduction of the Collaborathon, and basically part of our work and operation at the Yale Open Innovation Lab. It's really kind of what prompted the session for today, is around getting ideas around what does a bottom-up engagement in the context of now postponed COP26 session in November. So let me share my screen real quick. This will help me try to keep it contained. I mentioned a bit about the role that the Yale Open Innovation Lab has. We normally try to think about systemic interventions and use systems thinking to say, where are key leverage points that our complex systems lie for us to develop projects that can specifically address them. Well, a couple of years ago, we started asking the question, can distributed ledger technology, such as blockchain, have a role at maintaining our global planetary carbon budget? Because in some sense, this is the single account that we all share. Well, that led us to a technology and also policy wormhole that led us into the project that we've launched last year called Open Climate. And it was not just the atmospheric carbon budget that was of importance when we started doing more research. We found more of a global accounting gap. And we could frame it into three parts. On one side is the lack of sort of automation between all of planet Earth and Earth system monitoring information with vis-a-vis the data collected from policy. So that pertains specifically to the global stocktake, as I'll talk a little bit more about. The second is the linkage between non-state and state level accounting. In the United States, the movement of We Are Still In has been quite intense. However, non-state actors still do not account within the Paris Agreement. And third, the incentives for non-state actor accounting and accountability, so that we can prevent a lot of pledges without any form of tracking. And the other big gap really is on the data and technology side. We are expecting to do multiple global stocktakes and from now until 2050 in the context of UNFCCC. This year was quite important because of the NDC review. But to summarize all the different data and technology gaps, I often describe that we now do trusted corporate reporting 4 times a year. Companies more and more are quarterly focused, and we also submit taxes once a year. And all of this has been advanced because of the data and technological integration, yet we expect to do planetary level accounting once every 5 years and expect that a global stocktake will take around 2 years for reconciled data sets. So if we turn this upside down and we say, wait, this is some of the most important accounting we could do, let's make sure that the data and the technology that we have now is properly integrated. So that led to the concept of open climate as the design for a system, a global climate accounting system that can integrate a lot of the efforts that are existing today, but under common protocols and standards. We actually took this to prototyping and design level with a couple of key features around Earth data consensus and leveraging IoT, AI, and blockchain. But also the probably most important is the role of nested accounting. Non-state actors jurisdictionally nest within, let's say, a city or a state or a province, and that eventually rolls up to the national level, eventually to UNFCCC. So we've been looking at different architectural structures for enabling that so that greenhouse gas inventories at the country level can just essentially inherit and roll up information from non-state actors and the linkage to financial. In fact, we have an extremely broad and integrated framework on how to integrate Earth system data, world system registries, the process of monitoring, reporting, and verifying, the role of markets and finance. With a project this complex, we said, well, there's no way that we from New Haven in our lab can develop this, let alone with a couple of other partners. This is something that requires collaboration at an unprecedented scale. So we put out last year a strong call to action for an open source, globally owned climate accounting system. And the logic is, well, if we have a common architecture and framework, we can reach out to multiple partners around the world, which we call nodes, starting with universities and civic tech groups, to bring in participants to assemble into teams and work on specific technological projects related to those pieces of that tool. So hackathons, normally teams are competing against each other. Here, they have to collaborate on build different pieces of the same puzzle. And that was the launch of the Collaborathon last year with our first great proof of concept in some sense. Last year with Paris, Berlin, Manila, Melbourne, Toronto, Shanghai, Singapore, LA, New Haven, people all around the world working in their different corners on the common problem. And so this year, we did a more expansive timeline. We launched in Earth Day the series of open climate dialogues that actually have inspired the format for today's session. But our biggest event of the year, of course, is in the lead up to the Conference of the Parties, so that we structure the role of a Collaborathon as a pre-COP that informs and furthers technology for not necessarily the global stocktake, but the independent global stocktake. In the context of this year, with COP26 postponed, there is a very important gap to fill, and a lot of key people that are normally engaged in COPs to actually engage in the context and collaborate directly on concrete solutions. The way that we are thinking November at the moment, and we'll be publishing that this week, but why today's session is so important to gather ideas, is essentially the fusion between a conference with expert panels and open climate dialogues and the formats of unconferences with an open source hackathon where we have ongoing working groups and teams working together. That, in the span of the 2 weeks, looks kind of like intense like a COP, but it starts with a series of prompt-related dialogues, but participants around the world can start hacking all throughout with specific points for onboarding the different teams. And if we, this is probably the last thing I want to share, the way that we're looking at the first sessions for the first couple of days are actually related to prompts that are structured with a specific role within climate accounting. The first one is the role of the independent global stocktake, how NGOs can participate in the accountability of projects that UNFCCC has to guide in GSTs, the role of collaboration and new technologies for scalability, emissions mitigation, both clean energy and land-based, as well as adaptation credits and certificates, the role of platform integration standards and protocols, and finance. And so with this, we expect to have panels with experts from around the world and form teams and specifically dedicate the 2 weeks of COP to actually building solutions. This is a bit of the framework. It's climate accounting. The non-accounting format is obviously collaboration, but carbon accounting is a part of it, obviously emission mitigation, but then it's extremely important to work on non-carbon accounting like adaptation, technology, and finance. This is essentially the format of how we plan to run it. We have multiple different environments for collaboration that we've already set up and a lot of different tiers for partnership. So that's, please find more in the website, but more than anything, I'm particularly excited about the discussions today on the breakout rooms to hear what are the thoughts where we should be focusing on for November that we have not yet put on paper. So with that, I think our next speaker is Tom Baumann. Tom, you can take it from there.
Thanks very much, Martin. I'm going to share my screen as well. I hope this will work well. Let's see. Can you see my screen?
Yes, oh good.
Okay, good. Thanks very much. Hello, everyone. This is Tom Baumann. I'm calling from, or joining from Ottawa, Canada. It's a beautiful day here, and I'm going to introduce the Climate Change Coalition and talk a little bit about our flagship initiative, the Data and Digital Innovation Infrastructure, or D2I2 initiative. The Climate Change Coalition was launched in 2017 on the One Planet Summit, second anniversary of the Paris Agreement, with 12 organizations. And since then, this open, global, multi-stakeholder global network has grown around the world to around 200 organizations or so in 50 countries. And just to give you a sense of the membership, the organizations come from many different backgrounds. About 40% are blockchain and digital solution providers. Roughly a quarter are an array of service providers. And then the remainder come from government and industry, academia, and NGOs. So the majority actually of the membership are really the user community and other stakeholders than the, say, the tech community. But it's a very good combination of backgrounds which are necessary to help cultivate many of these initiatives that Martin and Miroslav and the other speakers had talked about. And also we have growing presence across the globe, which is again recognizing the global importance of addressing climate in a multitude of ways. Our activities are very member driven, so it's a very horizontal, open participatory network. So just the networking and partnering at events, which have been going pretty regularly at the major climate events such as Climate Week and World Bank Innovate for Climate, and of course COPs and so on. And we use a variety of tools to facilitate the knowledge exchange with so many different types of activities happening. It's almost a challenge to stay up on how each of these solutions are evolving independently and together, whether they're creating pilots and use cases or starting to collaborate on some of the commonly shared governance and standards and frameworks. And so as Martin's presentation highlighted, there's just such a huge diversity of not just climate actions, of course, across mitigation, adaptation, and finance, but whether those are on the ground projects or their markets or their finance and so on. And so I find one of the very interesting elements of the Climate Change Coalition is that the members are covering smart climate actions like smart agriculture, in which efficient use of, say, fertilizer or other agricultural inputs facilitated by IoT help to reduce our impact on the environment while also enabling more sustainable and resilient agri-food supply chain. But they're also using blockchain with IoT, smart contracts, and so on to digitize the accounting, or the MRV, the measurement, reporting, and verification, as well as using blockchain technology that's incorporating this climate accounting to integrate it with blockchain for supply chain so that you can enable more low carbon supply chains. For example, Miroslav talked a bit about how citizens can participate more effectively in their procurement, purchasing decisions. And then, of course, I think many people associate blockchain, pardon me, and the digital currencies as means with which we could modernize the carbon credit registration, tokenization, and markets. But there's so much more. There's the digital climate finance, and the next presentation will go into more detail about that. And I think there's been quite a lot of progress made in how these digital solutions are supporting renewable power, energy efficiency, and as Martin had mentioned, adaptation to climate impacts and adaptation finance is such a huge goal at the international level. The objective is to mobilize essentially an equivalent amount of resources for adaptation as compared to mitigation, and yet adaptation has a far way to go. So quite a diversity of initiatives, and how can we support the coordination and collaboration that's necessary to provide greater cohesion and alignment of the policies and frameworks and actions to really scale those actions most efficiently, and particularly now under the growing momentum to support a more sustainable economic recovery, more resources into a green recovery. So utilizing digital transformation to enable exponential climate solutions. Angel's presentation highlighting that we really have a very short amount of time in this decade for change. And so the data and digital innovation infrastructure really considers not only the digital innovations, which of course are very valuable, but in the absence of these other innovations and integrating them together can have limited impact. So the financial innovations, social and governance innovations, how can we bring those together more synergistically? And this is an idea that goes back nearly 2 years or so. I can recall at the Global Climate Action Summit in San Francisco in September 2018, Miroslav talking about the need to empower citizens and youths to be climate entrepreneurs and to really open up more effectively participation as not just solution providers, but climate smart consumers and the works. And we recognize there's all of the rapidly evolving digital innovations, but also within, say, sustainable finance, we see the evolution of taxonomies and standards, and so the need to link together these evolutions so that they work more efficiently was really talked about back in 2018, as I mentioned, and then last year at Climate Week in New York, Martin, the Yale Open Climate Lab project, Martin and Miroslav and the Climate Change Coalition held an event launching, or I should say, announcing the initiative, and then again at COP25, and I'm sure Miroslav has some links that could be shared to those events, in which we launched more formally the initiative. And over the last few months, working with colleagues at the INATBA, International Blockchain Association, and also with the Hyperledger ecosystem. Martin and I co-chair the Climate Action and Accounting Special Interest Group, in which we're starting up a new standards working group to really tackle that challenge of not just interoperability of digital solutions, but combining climate standards, tech standards, finance standards to work more seamlessly and within a digital environment. And then, of course, there's several other initiatives as well. But I understand we're limited for time, so I'll end my presentation there. If you'd like to get in touch, there's our website. We have a group on LinkedIn, and be happy to follow up afterwards. So thanks very much, Martin and Miroslav. I'll hand it back to you if you'd like to.
Thanks, Tom.
Invite the next speaker.
Yeah, I think coming up, maybe Anita or Mark who will join next. We have been running a bit behind in schedule, so hopefully everyone's okay with that, and we'll adapt, and we can extend some of the breakout sessions till after the top of the second hour. With that, Mark, if you want to go next, you look ready, or Anita.
I think it's better if we have. I think in terms of staying with the digital topic, it would be good to have Anita, because it's also connected with the D2I2 initiative and the Climate Change Coalition. If you agree, Mark.
No problem.
Okay.
Anita? Yes. Great. The floor is yours.
Yeah. Hi everyone. My name is Anita. I'm with EverCity. EverCity is a member of Climate Change Coalition, and the main thing that we're working on is a digital platform for impact measurement, management, and investment. So we've started the work on digital green finance way back in 2016 under the project WPCI, which issued the first carbon credits on blockchain. But currently, we're moving more towards other types of green finance, and mainly green bonds. So the key project that we're working on currently is making a pilot project of issuing a digital green bond, which would be monitored, and where financial parameters of the bond will be linked to the coupon. And we believe that it is very much in line with ideas of green recovery and all the ideas that we heard about today in terms of EU Green Deal, and specifically green digital recovery. So now that there will be recovery from the COVID crisis, there will be a need to ensure that all the finance is targeted directly at the climate projects, and there will be a need for tools to monitor that. So this is the work that we are doing. The pilot projects that will be coming soon will be related to renewable energy, but apart from that, we're also working with agricultural sector, and we'll do some projects there, probably in Southeast Asia, because agriculture, as is well known, it also largely contributes to CO2 emissions, which is why it's necessary to both introduce digital ways to optimize it and to monitor their implementation and actual progress there. So the big work related to finance needs to be done. But in addition to this, we believe that in the context of People's COP, it is also very important to create ecosystems and involve a large number of different stakeholders. And we're also doing this work within EverCity. So on the one hand, we're trying to bring together a lot of partners such as business, state authorities, representatives of different countries. And we recently held an event at Valdai Discussion Club, which is a very famous and high-level platform in Russia. So I will share the link to the recording of this event. It included really great speakers such as former Deputy Finance Minister of Germany, Kaya Kochweser, and the representative of business and finance world. So if you wish to have a look, it was a really interesting event. So this is one part of building an ecosystem, engaging a large number of stakeholders, but also it's crucial to develop bottom-up initiatives, grassroots initiatives. And this is why we're also launching a digital SDG accelerator. And this is also, I believe, in line with what many of you are doing, with the work that Martin is doing within Open Yale and so on. I will share my screen here and show you the website of this accelerator. The purpose will be to support innovative initiatives in Eurasian Economic Union to further accelerate them and have pilot projects with business. In addition to this, we'll also develop a catalog of Eurasian Economic Union initiatives for further scalability and promotion on the international arena. And we think that this is the kind of work that is very much needed at the level of People's COP. And we encourage everyone and all the participants in Climate Change Coalition to create some sort of a bank of digital solutions and innovative technologies coming from all over the world, and we'll be happy to contribute with the results of our project, with the results of Accelerator, and we encourage everyone to join in with their initiatives, and we'll be happy to host and co-host an event at People's COP presenting all those initiatives and discussing how we could implement them later. So we'll be happy to stay in touch and answer all the questions, and yeah, well, we're always available and happy to collaborate. That's all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Anita. Mark, you are ready to go next.
Okay. Hi, thank you. My name is Mark McCaffrey, and I live in Hungary outside of Budapest. I have been involved with climate work for several decades now, and about 5 years ago I met Miro at COP25 in COP21, I'm sorry, in Paris. And at that time, Miro suggested there could be an opportunity for bringing together a community of education, communication, and outreach stakeholders, which is really my passion. I think some of you are familiar with the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, and specifically Article 6 of the convention, which I'm going to paste into the chat window. So just to refresh your memories, if you don't have this memorized, we'll have a quiz on this later. But Article 6 of the convention, which has been renamed a couple of years ago, ACE, which stands for Action for Climate Empowerment, is all about people getting involved with climate action. There's some language in Article 6 that specifically talks about public participation in developing adequate responses to climate change. And the idea of Article 6 was, you know, when it was drafted, you know, back in 1991, the idea is that it would provide a vision for nations mobilizing to inform their publics, engage their publics, so that the public was actually involved in coming up with solutions to reduce carbon emissions and sequester carbon and all the rest of it. And as we know, that has not happened very well, because for most of the past 20 years, we've left the process in the hands of the so-called experts. and we haven't engaged people by and large. And I know that Marie-Claire will talk more about the work that she's doing as a working in Switzerland and elsewhere around action for climate empowerment. But I just wanted to share with you briefly a new campaign that ECOS, our organization, Education, Communication, and Outreach Stakeholders, which was recognized by the UNFCCC 3 years ago as an official community. We have just launched this new initiative that is geared towards a new campaign called Learn for Climate. Can you all see the homepage here? Am I sharing the screen correctly?
No.
Not yet.
Okay, let's see what I'm doing wrong.
Yes, now it will come.
Okay, great. So our ECOS website is climateecos.org. We just launched this campaign today, as a matter of fact, Learn for Climate. And the idea is that we're talking about learning in the largest sense of the word, education in the largest sense of the word, engagement at every level of society. We have a number of organizations that have already signed on, and we would invite you to sign on through your organizations as well. And the idea is basically between now and the actual COP26, you know, a year and a half or 2 years from now almost, in Glasgow, we will build momentum so that this is no longer a neglected aspect of climate work. And there's just so much we can do engaging schools, engaging communities. And so I would encourage you all to take a look at this and see what ways you can get involved. You can learn more about ACE, the Action for Climate Empowerment here. And this map sort of gives you a sense of the milestones that we're aiming towards working along sort of the roadmap, if you will, over the next couple of years. And the one thing I just would like to add to this is that we have also been doing some research around the sweet spot for climate action. And of course, we've been mostly focused on national scales. You know, that's what the UNFCCC process is all about. And so I think that there's an opportunity for us to be thinking much more local in terms of climate action. We've done some research that suggests that there's actually a sweet spot for climate action of around 100,000 people. And it'll depend on the type of climate action, but 100,000 people is the scale that school districts work at, that hospitals work at to provide public health, that police and public safety officers work at for, you know, not always very effectively or appropriately to protect and serve their societies. And we also think that this is where climate action can be maximized. Obviously, through this incredible digital technology, we can connect with people all over the world, but we live in one place and we use energy from nearby where we live. You know, yes, sometimes energy can be transported long distance, but ultimately the more local our food and our energy and our water come from, the more sustainably we can live. So I think with that, I'd again just encourage you all to take a look at our website, which Miro has posted into the chat window. And I look forward to continuing this conversation with all of you down the line. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Marie-Claire, it's a pleasure to have you. And please feel free to share your angle, and the floor is yours.
Great, thank you so much. Yeah, my name is Marie-Claire, and I'm going to share probably a little bit different presentation the next 5 minutes. Because as a young person, we are very often very frustrated what is going on, especially as non-state actor, despite I have actually been on a serving in a Swiss delegation as the youngest negotiator from Switzerland. So I had experience from both sides. But when we are asking, especially young people, but mostly all the non-state actors, but also the state actors, very often when we're asking them, why are you so passionate about solving this climate crisis? It goes back to an experience they had in nature. And for me, this was the glaciers in Switzerland when I saw how they were declining when I was a little child, hiking there, and later on also when I was diving at some of the world-known hotspots for diving, and there was just no fish at all. So I was very concerned. And since a lot of people come back and say that this is when they started to be active, lately I thought, why do we have a COP? Why do we have conferences which are so far apart from what actually triggers people to think about it and to be active? Because there are very little people who say that, oh, I'm very concerned about the climate crisis and I got active because I'm in these huge halls and very abstract talks and negotiations. So there might be a consideration, how can we bring back this sense of urgency and feeling of being nature and being part of nature are actually concerned about the climate crisis. And also because today is the World Oceans Day, I later found out that the oceans and the cryosphere, basically the frozen world, is really crucial to our own survival. So it really sustains us, and also that it's under pressure, as we all know. And the changes in our oceans and all the frozen world will determine our life, and is very, very essential. As you can see, it's changing the climate in Switzerland, but also globally. So a lot of young people went to the streets because they were really frustrated. And if we would, maybe like what is written on my poster, if we would relay our climate and the fever or the heating our climate has to a person we love, I think all of us would change much faster and with more intensity, and also more consensus, and wouldn't argue on minor details if our loved ones actually have an existential risk of a collapse. So and also a lot of young people, we are sharing the vision of saving our Earth. It's actually very simple. Maybe it sounds very naive and visionary, but this is what we are aiming to do. And also, especially in the climate scene, taking ambitious action. That's why we are taking unprecedented, bold, impactful, positive, meaningful, risk and ambition actions to fulfill the SDGs, and especially the climate action SDG number 13. So we have been striking climate strikes in Switzerland, Friday for Future internationally, but also we have been going to COPs for ages. I was not even born when there have already been young people participating in the international climate negotiations. I had the privilege to join COP23 in Bonn, and later on COP24 with Swiss Youth for Climate, a national youth organization, and was an enormous privilege also because I know that not all young people around the world have the privilege to join such international conferences, maybe because of visa issues, maybe because there's no organization, or they just don't have the financial means to participate in such an international conference. Also, last year in Madrid, I was part as the youngest delegate and negotiator in the Swiss delegation, and was, amongst other topics, responsible for action for climate empowerment, gender negotiations, and technology transfer. So was very happy with what I was negotiating on behalf of Switzerland. So young people are really putting on the table this urgency and the scale of ambitions we are needing. And I really hope that more young people get a seat at the table, that we are allowed to speak, and not at midnight when no one is in the room, but really when the people are listening to us. But moreover, it's important that young people are not only getting the spot to speak, but are there when the decisions are taken, that they have the ability to interact with high-level speakers. Here are several presidents of Switzerland I had the pleasure to interact throughout the last years, but also interacting with other presidents, especially the ones from the countries, the big polluters, to talk to them and bring across our aims and make the whole space more inclusive. but also having the ability to interact with other high-level speakers, because at the end we need the unity and everyone needs to be heard. And if we really want to fulfill this, that everyone needs to be heard, we have to face ourselves on the same eye level. And this is unfortunately not often the case. My vision, and also YOUNGO's vision, YOUNGO is the official children and youth constituency to the UNFCCC, our vision is to inspire and empower young people solve the climate crisis and why they are coming to a COP as non-state actor. And for this, we really have to close the gap. Here it's for the gender action plan, but there are a lot of different gaps we have to close. So I would like to share my 5 recommendations of how we can close this gap between the state actors and the non-state actors, and basically all the people joining the COPs. So first, it's about the clarity. And when I'm talking, I really mean both sides, so the non-state actors and the state actors. It's about clarity, about the vision of the other group, let's say it like this, so that the ones who have the power to take decisions have to be clear and listen to the groups who at the moment is excluded from all the decision making, and incorporate their views more often. Second is really increase the commitment level. At the moment, there are still a lot of countries who are not yet that committed, as young people from their own nations would love to see their commitment. It's really important also that we have enough competence. And with competence, I not only mean the climate technical competence, but also the competences on how to approach each other, and how to speak to each other, and how to incorporate different views in the statement. And the fourth one is about we have to be way more courageous. And with this, I also really call upon all the parties, being also on the party delegation myself, of really speaking up, because we all know and we already heard that there is literally no time. And this place we created at the COP is our space to limit global warming. And if we are going in the speed as we have been going, we will never reach our goals. So we really have to step up and be way more courageous. And the last one, building a community between these different sectors, because at the end we are all in the same boat, as we have been saying at COP23. So building this community where we all face each other as humans, and yeah, getting rid of all these different levels and bridges which are only dividing us instead of uniting us when we are being at the COPs. So I really hope for COP26, but also for the lead up to COP26, because it's an incredible long way to meet actually at COP26. I really hope that we are all trying to reach for this impossible, because otherwise a lot of young people already lost hope in these international conferences. And I really don't want to see that even more young people lose any hope for this international conference. So let's reach for this impossible and try to make it happen on the way, that we can all come together at COP26 and be the champions of the earth. My name is Maanavilja, and I will post my email if you want to reach out in the chat box. And with this, hand over to Martin.
Great, thank you very much, Mary Claire. That was truly inspiring. Yunus, thank you for waiting. You're up next. After Yunus, we will take some questions from the participants in the chat, and after that we will split into some breakout rooms. So Yunus, thanks for joining. The floor is yours.
Martin, I said at the beginning I would not show any screen, but seeing all those nice presentations, I prepared 4 slides, if I may, and I would like to be brief if it's okay. Well, yeah, if I can manage that. So first of all, really congratulations for this webinar. Just to inform about myself, my name is Yunus and I'm the director of global advocacy at ICLE. This is the network of local governments, and we are the focal point since 1995 in the UNFCCC process. And I actually started the UNF climate action in 1995 when I was a young youth activist. So I recall Marie Claire very much. And I continue actually professionally as the Article 6 focal point. So I'm very happy to hear Mark. And when I started in 2009 in ICLE, Copenhagen was my first COP with ICLE. And it was very interesting because there was a presentation from the then mayor of Mexico City, who was the mayor of the World Mayors Council, chair of the World Mayors Council, who is now Minister of Foreign Affairs of Mexico, actually. He was saying that the UNFCCC is trying to solve the problems of 21st century with the solutions of the 19th century. When I listen to all your presentations, I recall his comments in this regard. And I think it's really true that this probably COVID pandemic has given us a lifetime chance that we have a bit increased the window of opportunity and have some time, 18 months ahead. And in particular, we have much more time to work at the national level. So coming to these discussions, as local governments, that was mentioned in previous speakers, I mean, Paris Agreement did not recognize local and UNFCCC and Kyoto Protocol did not recognize local and regional governments. For the first time, we were in the Paris Agreement, and we were seeing that the NDCs, in fact, did not reflect the Paris Agreement because they were all written before Paris Agreement was adopted. There was no mention of the 1.5 degree goals. There was no need for engaging local and regional governments. So it's true that the NDCs do not reflect the reality, and so many things have changed a lot. So when we were preparing for COP26, we said that as ICLE and the constitution of local governments, we have to develop a multi-level action COP. In Glasgow, we should make sure that this new generation of climate action reflects the Paris Agreement in full spirit, which is all levels of governments engaged. It is 6 levels of activities, but I will not go to that discussion today. I just wanted to give you the flavor that as local and regional governments, we'd like to be more engaged with you in terms of how we can prepare for COP. But my point would be, is when we're thinking about the raising of ambition at the national level, we're trying to make sure much more rigorous involvement of local and regional governments. And in fact, we have done this in the Talanoa dialogues. I mean, you remember there was an effort for it would be one of an event in one event in a COP, but we made it as all together with the Fijians and globally that Talanoa dialogues really made a lot of good dialogues that the real action can be changing the discussion at the UNFCCC level. So in the UNFCCC, what we are trying to bring towards COP26, and these are the cities that we are also putting in the race to zero, we have cities who have committed to 100% renewables. We have cities who have committed to carbon neutrality or climate neutrality. We have cities who declared climate emergency, and they are divesting from fossil fuels. So my appeal, I would like to conclude also now in the next couple of seconds, that this new chain technologies, these new initiatives, we as ICLE are ready to connect these initiatives that we are working with our members worldwide. At this current figure now from 300 at COP19, COP25 in Madrid in December 2019 is now increased to 650 plus. So how those new ideas, new mechanisms that you are offering could be introduced to these local governments who are trying to raise their ambition and deliver it with their citizens, so that if we can show before COP that these kind of interactions could be happening with the local and regional governments, we can show much more results towards and in Glasgow. And finally, in that sense, you have shown this November, and I'm happy to say that in October, we are having Daring Cities as an opportunity for 3 weeks of engagement. So I'm eager to follow up with Miroslav, my longtime friend, how we can make sure what we are proposing could be connected to our work, so that then we can show results in November. And that would be my final concluding remark. And this change of the mindset is also something that has to be speaking to the minds and the hearts. Just on the 5th of June, we have launched also this Pastoral Artist Declaration, which is bringing culture and music community. So in this new age of climate action, I encourage you that we also bring citizens, activists, but also culture and climate and music and arts community. That could also spur mayors and other leaders. So these are final remarks from my side. I'm sure there are a lot of questions and follow-up processes, and I'm happy to stay in touch with you, Miroslav, and the rest of the community here. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yunus. To everyone, that concludes the sessions from our speakers. So I encourage everyone to post their questions. And everyone that's spoken today, maybe you can turn off on the video and we'll be able to have a more dynamic dialogue as the questions come in. So turn on your video so that all our participants are able to see in one tap everyone that spoke. We have the first question from Jan. Given that many trillions of US dollars will be needed to mitigate climate change through transition to renewable economies and that private capital will be necessary, what outreach is being made to business? Would anyone be interested in answering that from the speakers? And may we also find a way of turning off some of those questions into ideas around how to better, for example, engage business in November? Maybe Mark, Yunus, Anita, any thoughts on the question?
Maybe just a very simple point from ICLE or local government side. I mean, it's true. This whole we're talking about 100 billion mark of figure that is not achieved by traditional official development assistance. And we're also aware there are so many business at the local level, there are real estate, and there are so many, let's say, small and medium-sized communities who are running billions of dollars. And we also have seen with this COVID and beat in 2008, so many money is floating around. And I think the more we can introduce to those progressive local governments and the more we can make local governments channel them with their council decisions to the right investments, to the right stakeholders, I think this could also show again that the citizens or the activist community should not only aim for national governments, but they also should approach their local governments, ask whether they have any investments, if they have any energy or any plans for climate action or low carbon, so that then they can make this connection together. So that could be my humble input, because the Global Green Climate Fund, we are all seeing how difficult it is, but there's also a real life going on, and we could much more influence that real life at the ground level.
You know, I think I would just add that it's not just more local businesses and local government, but schools, hospitals. We have to really transform our communities from the inside out. And I mentioned this idea of sort of a sweet spot at, you know, at a community to urban scale, you know, 10,000 to 1 million people, but 100,000 people might be sort of the ideal range, sort of where the global and the local come together. And that's really where it's at a human scale, but it's also where people live their lives and where schools and hospitals and other local institutions are operating. So just to sort of reinforce what Yunus said, I think that there's all this money that's sort of floating around from the stimulus packages really needs to be targeted at the local level, because otherwise it just continues the cycle of the people at the top siphoning off, you know, money that really is needed at the bottom for the people in the communities.
We have another very timely question. This pandemic outbreak created many uncertainties. Do we need to change action plans and priorities? May I take a first stab there in basically kind of what Mark just said? I think one of the key parts around the aftermath of the pandemic is the economic crises, and it's extremely important that we turn climate action into the most unprecedented economic opportunity we've ever had, and that capital and projects on the ground are highly participative for local communities, so that we don't drive climate action and economic opportunities only to top companies and large employers. we need to be able to empower economically the communities on the ground to also address the huge socioeconomic gap that also creates so many of our social tensions. Hopefully that sparks some thoughts for anyone else to make some comments around the cross-section between COVID and climate, and in the context of November, which of course, virtual participation is a huge part of it. Any thoughts? Okay. I received another question. Says, are we looking at bottom-up approach or vice versa? Is likely both, but coming in a clear idea will help us transfer ideas to our institutes. That comes from Lena. I think that was sent to me privately. But maybe anyone can either comment on that or continue on the thread of the pandemic question as well. Any specific thoughts there?
Could you repeat the question again, please? Sorry.
Its questions: are we looking at a bottom-up approach or the other way around? It is likely both, but coming in with a clear idea will help us transfer ideas to our institutes. I think I'm interpreting in the way that as we're framing We the People's COP, People COP in November, how do we see it? Is it only bottom-up, or do we see a hybrid there? And I think that's a very important question, and particularly engaging with non-state actors, large non-state actors that have active pledges, and also citizens is quite key, so that also all of that effort can roll up and inform the UNFCCC, the more official COP, which is still bottom up, but in many ways we could also see it as a bottom up from the top. But then how can that surface to that? So any thoughts from the panelists around what are some of the key points for network effects between all of these stakeholders for November? YOUNGO.
I also would like to connect to the question that was raised in the chat box. We have, since 2010, we have collecting a registry of commitments of local and regional governments, and this was the first data provider to NASCA in 2014. And definitely we want to make transparency as the key. It's not just empty words or just rhetorics, but they should really prove. And it's true, there are so many cities who are not able to achieve, but it is not their fault to be ambitious, but we have to help them. And they could say that, look, I have an ambition and bring me more money and make my citizens more engaged. So that's why we believe reporting and transparency is good, and it has to be supported, but it has to be easy, not too much complex. Coming to this, and that's especially the case, our definition of COP was multi-level action COP. And then this is the reality that there's no one city that can solve all the problems, or it's not always mayors perfect. There are also failing cities, just like failing national governments. They're also very aggressive and front-running cities as well, and countries as well. One example, Japan was very criticized because early this year they have submitted their second NDC, but we now know more than 50% of Japanese population are managed by cities and prefectures who have committed to zero carbon goals. And we're in touch with the Minister of Environment to make sure that there is a third nationally determined contribution of Japan. This was announced in Petersburg Climate Dialogue. We want this to be more ambitious, and with Minister of Environment, we want to bridge cities and prefectures of Japan to come to COP26 with their national government for a more ambitious NDC. And for this, we have to work now. And this next couple of months, I mean, the next 12 months is the key. Therefore, all what we're doing, we should definitely aim for to influence as much as possible NDCs so that they bring fresh information that is reflecting the new real transformation that is taking place. And it is not just for Japan. We have seen in Ivory Coast, Indonesia, so many countries, Rwanda, that the number is increasing. So we are happy to make these bridges together so it's a multi-level and collaborative action.
Any other thoughts from the panelists?
I would add to that. So I also really like the comment of Mark about Middle Earth, and it's actually the way it is working, and it's the way we also organize our projects. So when we, for example, create accelerators or bring hackathons, we engage innovators on one side, but we always try to bring government, authorities, business. So we always try to engage the decision makers and stakeholders who actually know strategically what solutions are needed, and they can understand what is the best way to implement them. So I think this is a very important idea which should be also implemented in people's scope, that it is on the one hand bottom up, but it also should engage all stakeholders, not leaving anyone.
Yeah, I think going back to this idea of sort of the middle out, and that there's a sweet spot so where the local and the global converge. I saw in the chat window, Florence was mentioning global as a concept, which I hadn't heard of before, but I like it. And you know, it kind of resonates that I think a lot of us recognize that we do have these incredible networks and systems. We have communities that are virtual, and we can use all these fantastic tools. And yet at the same time, you know, we live in a particular place, we live in a particular country. There's sort of all these fractal layers that we are embedded in, you know, from our households on up to national, international levels. But it's really at that level of local governance where a lot of the transformation really needs to happen. And so, as Yunus was saying, there are not just countries, but there's cities, there's entire subnational communities that are completely lost and need all the help they can get. And maybe they do have some local leadership, but they're, you know, in survival mode, basically. One of the things that we are trying to put together, we're working with an outfit called Spherical, which involves some former staff from the UNFCCC, and they are a mapping and GIS outfit, and we're looking at the possibility of looking at the entire world, sort of breaking it down into populations of about 100,000 people, so we can look at the gaps and we can look at the success stories. So in other words, in Budapest, a city of 2 million people, there happen to be about 20 districts, and so each one is roughly about 100,000 people. So we're looking more at the district level to see what are the opportunities for sustainable practices and for engaging the local local population, because, you know, districts are different. Arrondissements in Paris are a little bit different, and even in rural areas, you know, 100,000 people may be a huge rural expanse, but those people will have a lot in common, and so that's something that we're working on. And if any of you are interested, we would love to hear from you and explore that as an opportunity for helping identify the gaps, but also identify opportunities for rapid climate action.
Great thoughts. We have another question further up from Barry. He said, how might we keep sight of linking online, offline actions, which might include giving a physical presence to our virtual work, example, the carbon impacts of the digital, as well as giving of course, a virtual space to the physical actions. I think that also alludes to what is also the role of the digital innovation. We know that even though our society has been deeply transformed by the digital transformation, we are still yet in the beginning. We still see how digital keeps seeping into our society and how we deal with value and create value, connecting us, but also disconnecting us. So I'd be interested to see if anyone can address some of that question from the lens of the role of the digital world as it pertains to the evolution of COP. Any thoughts there? Okay.
I'll just say that, you know, in 1992, when the UNFCCC was launched and the signatories came together in Rio, there was really no internet to speak of, and, you know, it was at the very dawn of the digital age in many respects, certainly in terms of public access. So, you know, we now live in a completely transformed world, and we have tools that we're still struggling to make good use of, and we've also seen examples of how they can be, misused in a really sort of unforeseen way that has enormous consequences. So, yeah, I think we have great opportunities to explore these tools like blockchain and so forth, but we have to do it in a way that has really, as best we can, carefully thought through the ramifications of what we're trying to do.
As well as with remote virtual participation, I mean, there's a lot of inclusiveness that comes in from people being able to join from their remote corners around the world, but also a lot of people that still don't have access to the internet. I'm thinking to Florence question or comment, the push for sustainable development has usually come from the outside. We could start by learning from indigenous people. Is there any way that we can envision a COP that is even more inclusive? I think that's resonating there. Any thoughts on that? And I also wanted to pose to the group, if anyone has a question for the rest of the group. So not just answers, but a big part of this session is to ask the right questions, right? So it'd be interesting to hear from the 7 of you, if you have questions that you want to pose to the floor, to other speakers.
I think my question to Miro and Tom and others is, where do we go from here? What do we need to do between now and November to move forward with the People's COP agenda?
Yeah, thanks. That's a very good question. So there are several avenues. On the one hand, it would be good to have a series of webinars with ECOS communities, with youth, and also with the local governments and municipal authorities, constituencies in particular, to really explore who would like to be involved and to frame there some teams which would then concretely work on it. And this is also the basis then to forming digital communities for which we then can already develop concrete financing tools. As I said, we are planning to have crypto stamps and then also DAOs, distributed autonomous organizations, for collaborative decisions on the use of financial resources that come in. Because one of the ideas that we have is also that people, in order to become climate neutral, they should invest in their communities. Now you can buy CDM certificates or some of these other certificates which are very far away, and it's perhaps a big company which is financed by big international banks and corporations, but they have the capacity to get their carbon emission reductions certified. And now we will turn it around and we will say those who want to compensate for the carbon footprint that they have, despite the fact that they are trying hard to reduce it as much as possible, they can invest in the community and then invest the, let's say if you have carbon footprint of 8 tons or so, then you invest 8 times the cost of carbon ton equivalent in the community. And usually these credits are now between $5 and $10, also on the Climate Neutral Now homepage of the UNFCCC. But scientists say that the damage that 1 ton of carbon makes is between $100 and $200. So let's start with a carbon price of between $5 and $10 that our community members will be ready to invest in order to get somehow the certificate that they are climate neutral. And then this money we will then channel towards these climate action communities on the local level or thematically focused. And for this structure, we need really people who are somehow leading these networks to help us to frame it so that it will really function. So this is, let's have some webinars with this group stakeholder leaders, also with UNUS, and UNUS is also with the Covenant of Mayors, as far as I remember. So also connecting it as much as possible with the European Climate Pact, because the European Climate Pact, the European Commission said that they will also provide some funding. And so let's see if we are developing the right tools and platforms and digital measurement, reporting, verification, and everything, that we can convince European Commission and other public sector bodies to channel funding to these communities that we are creating, and really to have the most transparent and most best value for money climate action delivery mechanism that is possible. So first webinars, then seeing how we connect with the Europe, with financial resources from public sources, but also individual carbon footprint compensation. Then it would be good to try to enter a partnership with the UNFCCC. There's now an open call for partnerships of the UN Climate Change Secretariat. And as I said, they have an engagement mechanism for the individual, for a young person or so. And so they should be happy to have us, especially as it's such an open and transparent and participatory process. So I hope they will agree to enter with us in a strategic partnership. And yeah, and then there are some climate philanthropy leaders like Quadrature Climate Foundation from London that we are trying to get on board for really systemic and game-changing solution like this a digital pact platform that we are envisaging. And yeah, and perhaps the first step is that people send me an email saying that they would like to be connected, and then we create a group on LinkedIn or on Facebook, and then we have a call, and then we together create an action plan. One thing also with the UNESCO Management of Social Transformation Program, we have applied for a digital pact side event. Pacts and Bonds is the title, for the UN high-level political forum, which takes place in New York, but all the side events and exhibits are virtual. And there we want to bring also this digital pact solution to the New York-based UN processes around Agenda 2030, because we should not look at climate action only as SDG 13, but every climate action has so many co-benefits. It manifests in sustainable cities and communities, SDG 11, it can be renewable energy, SDG 7, yeah, and it has an educational effect always. It is SDG 16, good governance. And yeah, so it's a little bit confused, but I would say let's have a first call soon of those who would like to be engaged. And then we organize together a webinar series where we already give it more structure and clear engagement opportunities, and then seeking also to get a partnership with the UN Climate Change Secretariat and potentially with foundations, as we've had on the call, also somebody from Open Society Foundation, perhaps are there some financial resources. And our idea is that we really develop a system where we can then develop bankable projects. So really on a scale and a quality that even institutional investors can invest in this kind of action and related infrastructure development, especially for the activities on the local level with public authorities on the local level. I see so many possibilities, and let's plan in November to have their big blast. And Martin's work is also a very good framework in which we can then get more structure and orientation.
Mm-hmm. Ira, thanks for joining. One of our panelists asked to have you join real quick. It sounds like you also had a raised hand. Is there anything that you would like to add or comment?
Thank you. First of all, just quickly, this was a great conversation, and Miroslav and Martin, you did a great job of pulling together a panel of leaders in this space, many of whom I know well and know of their ongoing efforts. The one quick comment I'd like to make is that it's one thing to inspire and track non-party efforts. It's another thing to directly impact UNFCCC entities and processes. I allude to my own experience in attending and attempting to influence adaptation committee meetings in Bonn. I also allude to my own experience in attempting to engage a full multi-stakeholder dialogue of non-party stakeholders in the development of the Paris rule book, especially on the adaptation side, and for example, on a topic of importance like adaptation communications. And on the adaptation committee level, non-party stakeholders are preferred to be seen but not heard. With respect to the Paris rulebook adaptation communications, it was impossible, as it turned out, to get the necessary information to provide to non-party stakeholders. We were going to do this even without the advantage of a digital platform. In fact, through my Climate Adaptation Scholars Group, we were going to use Tom Bauman's existing Collaborate platform. But we weren't able to get started because even in the opinion of UNFCCC communications staff, the parties themselves really were not ready to handle non-party engagement. So I'm very motivated to help direct some of this effort, at least, toward change with the internal UNFCCC processes, not only motivating the efforts of non-party stakeholders on the full range of efforts as others have discussed today. Thanks.
Thank you, Ira. Well, we're 10 minutes to the end of our second hour, and fortunately, we've had some very exciting conversations and very rich presentations from our panelists. Before we move into perhaps one of the most participative side of the webinar, which is breaking out into rooms and create more ideation opportunities, which really falls with the ethos of what we're talking about, is how do we open the floor for bottom-up to happen, for bottom-up brainstorming, and how can that translate into collective efforts. This is part of what we've started doing earlier this year in the context of the Collabothon Open Climate Dialogues. How do we engage people to connect directly? In our initial schedule, we were going to break out into rooms and then come back into our main hall to share some of that and then do some final announcements. But because of the time, what I think is we can do final announcements now and finish the official part of the session, and then keep the breakout rooms as a optional opportunity for everyone that would like to stay. And when we do that, let me just walk through quickly what's an ideal format. We have around 44 participants online joining from different parts of the world, everyone with great perspectives and amazing ideas, and we want to collect them. So this is also an exercise on self-organization. And what the People's Co-op is also around the power of self-organization. Let me first tell you, it's not easy. And this is why we constantly have to ideate and experiment. So if you find yourself in the waiting room, you can take the role of being a harvester, someone that writes down what's being said and some of the ideas and writes some bullets. And then you can post them directly on the chat for everyone to share as the breakout room is happening, or send them directly to me. I will compile them and then share it to everyone that registered, so that we also share the video, the outcome, and some of the collections of some of those ideas, and how can that translate into the efforts that every team in many ways is putting to November. So create a team of teams for a very, very participative November session. Hopefully that makes sense. And there could be multiple people helping coordinate that. Ideally, we want to have around 5 to 6 people in each breakout room. So think of this being a virtual conference, and then you break out into roundtables. It's exactly what it is. We did one in the New York Climate Week last year and shared out some of the results, which were particularly interesting because they were thematic. If you want to propose a theme within your group, that is also part of self-organization. You're free to do that. But just make sure that everything that you're able to capture and share with the group is also being able to create a bit of institutional memory so that we can share it back to the group. This is the logic also looking forward from now until November. So if anyone else would like to make some final announcements, maybe we can start transitioning into that. I'd like to first invite our speakers to maybe say some final words. Miroslav, if you have any logistics, and I may add something here and there, but to try to keep it brief so that we can transition. I will, we will have this for around 30 minutes, so not a full hour of breakout sessions, at least for everyone to say hi and share some of your afterthoughts. Any final announcements?
Yeah,
From
this
my
is
side, I have said everything I wanted to say. Would just like to thank all the panelists, and especially also Martin for being such a great co-organizer, and Tom Baumann. He was today not so much in the focus, but he is one of the masterminds behind all that we are doing, and really a great visionary. And let's plan to have calls and joint communication and collaboration in the future, and digital innovation will help.
Great. Thanks, Miro. Mark?
Yeah, just quickly, thank you all for organizing this and participating. ECOS invite you all to be a part of our community. Come to climateecos.org, and every Wednesday at 5 o'clock Central European Time, 11 o'clock Eastern Time, we have community calls, and this week we'll be focusing on our Learn for Climate campaign. Thanks.
Perhaps we can then create a thread after this webinar for people to share some community initiatives and cross dialogue so that everyone stays connected. That might be helpful, because I think that we're probably not the only group that is thinking about how to reimagine and reinvent a COP and the role for participation. So one of the key important parts is to create networks of networks.
Yes, exactly.
And from our end, I will also share back next steps on the Collaborathon. YOUNGO, anything else to add on your end?
Yeah, I'm happy to stay in touch. Just my key message is that we have to focus on action at this year, so that we present results, not wait for the COP, because it's really the change at the national and local level. And during this year, there's also the ACE program that Mark mentioned is now in the remaking. It's the next 5 years is being designed. The Race to Zero, the Marrakesh partnership is also being redesigned. I suggest that all these efforts are also fed through the submissions, as Ira mentioned. It's not an easy effort. It's not easy to change UNFCCC, but it's also never we should never give up, and there's much more opportunities now. There's much more ambition and vision to engage more innovative ideas. So I think this community could also use these opportunities as well, and we as ICLE are ready to see how we can collaborate. So I have to leave. I couldn't stay for longer, the working groups, but wish you the best, and I'm looking forward to seeing your outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Yunus. We will follow up with an email to all registrants and participants with opportunities, next steps for connection, new ideas, and follow-ups. If you have to leave, this is a good time. More than anything, thank you very much for everyone that joined today. This has been an exciting and important time. And let me just state the spirit that this is not as an alternative to UNFCCC, as a complement. UNFCCC does an amazing job given their context, but it's not up to them to solve all of the planetary problems. And there's a lot of room for collective complementary action. So we have